To know Visenya Targaryen, her fears, motivations, and deepest secrets is, as the poets say, to paint a dragon's roar. It is a thing which cannot be done. Too much time has passed, too much speculation has been had by maesters, singers, and small folk alike. Instead, we must look to the historical records available to us and attempt to paint a picture of her character from what is written therein. She was born on Dragonstone to Lord Aerion Targaryen and Lady Valena nee Velaryon, firstborn of 3 children. Her siblings were Aegon and Rhaenys. Together, they would alter the waft and weft of history's wheel, forever changing the destiny of Westeros. 100 years ago, the Targaryens had abandoned their lands and seat in Valyria for the remote outposts they would name Dragonstone. When the freehold fell in the Doom, they became the world's last surviving dragonlords. Though the city-states of the East warred with one another, hoping to step up as the next great power, the Targaryens took no part, merely keeping a detached eye on the events. These histories were related to Visenya as a child. Instructions on reading and elocution in the syntax of the Valyrian tongue were given to her, for she was noble-born, and ignorance in such a one is unseemly. Somewhat to her parents' concern, Visenya shunned the flights of fancy most girls, including her own sister Rhaenys, were prone to. Instead, she demanded to be trained in swordplay alongside her brother. She proved to be quite gifted with a blade, and so passed much of her younger years sparring in the yard. Aegon was better than her, but no matter, she acquitted herself well. When the time came, all 3 children proved to be dragonlords, claiming a dragon of their own. Aegon took Balerion, the largest and oldest, for it had been hatched in the freehold. Rhaenys took Meraxis and Visenya Veiga. Of the 3, Rhaenys delighted most in the capabilities her mount offered. Often she took to the skies, purely for the pleasure of it. She was a strange creature, Rhaenys, at least to Visenya's eye, soft-spoken, not demure by any standard, but so different from herself. Perhaps even then there was some bitterness in her, for she saw how enamored Aegon was of her. Amongst the blood of the dragon, as the Dragonlords of Valyria called themselves, it was common for brother to wed sister. Kin wed kin, so as to keep the bloodlines pure, and so ensure that their command over the dragons would continue. As a child then, Visenya would have wondered who her future lord husband would be. Will it be Aegon, or some Velaryon cousin? Or would her parents finally cede to the free city's courting and give her to one of them, the musings typical of childhood? Hers would have been a tedious coming of age had it not been for Aegon's dream. Along with the mastery of dragons, some of the Targaryens were gifted with dragon dreams. It was one such, a vision of the coming doom, that forewarned Lord Aenor Targaryen and spurred him to relocate his family. Aegon dreamed, and in his dream he saw the end of man. A terrible winter gusting out of the distant north. Absolute darkness rode on those winds, set on destroying the world of the living, and the only chance of pushing back the cold and dark lay in a united Westeros standing against it. The Targaryens must play a part, for their dragons would be a tool and an asset in that coming battle. When he woke, he knew it for a true vision of the future to come. He named it the Song of Ice and Fire, and considered both it and the other echoes of the distant future. When Visenya first heard of this dream and of Aegon's plan, she must have been thrilled. No life of boredom for her, no. not if her brother's ambitions came true. And if any man could realize such a thing, something so seemingly far-fetched, it would be Aegon. Even as a child, he was singularly unique. A man such as comes once in 100 years, if at that. The dragon must have 3 heads. He had seen it in one of those visions. They all knew he preferred Rhaenys, but would Visenya join them? Would she break traditions so? Polygamy, though it was not unknown in ancient Valyria, was rare. Visenya smiled. How could she not? Before they turned their gaze from the east, Aegon agreed to aid Pentos and Tyrosh in their alliance against Volantis. He flew to Lys and there set on fire a fleet of ships about to invade the city. Perhaps this was a test to see whether he had the stomach for what violence will be needed to forge the desperate kingdoms of Westeros into one realm. When he returned, the siblings shifted their full consideration onto the continent of Westeros. They visited the citadel of Old Town, met with some of the lords and ladies of the kingdom, went hawking on the arbor as guests of Lord Redwine. Perhaps even a brief stay at Lannisport was involved. Aegon ordered a massive table to be carved into the shape of Westeros and painted to show all the woods, rivers, towns and castles of the 7 kingdoms. They would gather about this map, poring over the terrain, considering the many skirmishes that had been fought over it, the tactics used by Hywin Hardhand when he took the trident from Arek Durandon, the best places to set up supply lines, the temperament of the various rulers, and some history of their lands. Visenya wed Aegon alongside her sister. In accordance with the traditions of Valyria, they continued planning. What would be their cause? What banners would they bear? Which allies could they count on? What was the best place to launch their conquest at? Visenya was present when Aegon had Agilak the Arrogant's proposal for a betrothal between Aegon and his daughter. They scoffed over the man's obvious politicking, wary of the rising power of Harren the Black and the decline of his own fief. Lord of Storm's End wanted to ensconce Aegon as a barrier between them and him. Maybe the Storm King thought Aegon so removed from Westeros' maneuvering that he would be ignorant of who truly held the lands Agilak was offering. Aegon refused the marriage offer and sent a polite counteroffer. Perhaps Princess Durandon could be given to their half-brother, Orys Baratheon. Orys was a fair hand with a blade. They had trained together, and though the man was a brute, strong and big as an ox, Visenya had laid him low several times. Even he had to shy from her Valyrian steel sword, Dark Sister. If Lord Durandon agreed to this, they would have gained an ally. Surely Agilak was desperate enough. But no. She saw the hands of the envoy delivered back with Agilak the Arrogant's reply, saw the fury on Aegon's face, knew that this was it. No more dithering. Aegon acted swiftly. Summoning all their friends and allies, they took counsel. Many of their plans had already been considered, but they reviewed them anew, for this was it. Visenya nursed a cup of wine as she mused over their allies. Her cousins, the Velaryons of Driftmark, the Celtigars of Claw Isle, Lords Bar-Remon of Sharp Point and Macy of Stondance, a small number to be sure. But they had dragons. Nothing the bloated lords of this land had could counter that advantage. As she prepared herself, scouring armor and polishing saddles, she considered the state of her marital union. No heirs as of yet. Aegon, predictably, favored Rhaenys over her. They clashed too often, but she was given to speaking her mind, and the years of waiting had grated on her. And yet, Aegon was faithful in his own way. Many men partook of a mistress or two. Her own father had not hesitated in sowing dragon seeds on Dragonstone, and yet Aegon refrained. For that much she could respect him. All the same, the war was at hand. That would occupy her for a time. She would consider this as further when their new realm was secured. In 7 days' time, the ravens flew to every notable lord or lady in Westeros. They each bore one message: kneel or you shall be knelt. Aegon of House Targaryen would henceforth rule all of these lands as king, and he would suffer no other pretenders to the title. The siblings went before the seven in prayer before setting off. None of them were especially pious, but it was a quirk of Aegon's they acquiesced to. But the 7 kingdoms, most of them, were under the auspices of the 7. It was wiser to seek their favor than to suffer their wrath. Then all the gathered forces set out, and the fleet landed on the shores of Westeros at the agreed upon strategic location, the place that would henceforth be called King's Landing. There, for the first time, the 3-headed dragon spewing flame on a field of black, arms of House Targaryen flapped in the wind, heralding a new age to come.